Okay. Hi, I'm Steve Danziger, and I'm a master gardener. Been a master gardener since 2015. Hedwig and I are presenting today. We're usually master gardeners. And what we do is we disseminate mostly research-based information. However, this topic that we're doing today, some of the topic is just best practices in Firewise landscaping and preparing your home. UC doesn't cover everything. So I just wanted to let you all know that. Although wildfires have beneficial impacts on ecological resources, they also have been catastrophic for many fire-prone communities in California, and are increasing urban development in or near undeveloped wildland and extreme weather conditions have made the last 2 years the most devastating fire years in our state's history, recorded history. The threat to life and property is real, and it's worthwhile for all of us to get prepared. So today, Hedwig and I are going to try to give you some information on strategies on how you can reduce your risk in fire-prone California by protecting and hardening your home and creating beautiful Firewise landscapes in conjunction with careful selection, placement, and maintenance of plants in your garden. Not that we needed it, but the last 2 years have been another wake-up call regarding the threat of wildfires in our state. 2020 was by far the worst year for wildfires since we began tracking. 2020 had 5 of the 10 largest fires in California history. And in the past 20 years, there have been 17 of the most destructive wildfires in California history have occurred. And that does not include, those destructive fires does not include the Oakland Hills fire of '91, the Jones and the Shasta fires in 1999. 2021 actually had more fires than 2020, had 8,835 recorded fire, which was the most ever, but had less acreage. The acreage was about 3.2 million acres. And 2021 also included 2 of the top 20 most destructive fires. According to a recent study by CAL FIRE, sudden oak death and bark beetles have accounted for over 150 million dead trees in this state. Due to changing climate, 6 of the hottest days ever recorded have been recorded in the last 5 years. And if you remember how hot it was, last summer and the summer before, the summer of 2020, when we had those smoke-filled days in August and September. In 2020, most of the 2021, some of the information is still being collected. So some of this is really from 2020, but in 2020, you see the statistics up on the screen. And additionally, over 10,000 structures were lost and 28 lives, including 3 firefighters. Historically in the East Bay, I know not everyone on this Zoom is from the East Bay, but here in the East Bay, we've historically had large fires. There were extremely large fires in 1923 in the Berkeley Oakland Hills, 1970, Berkeley Oakland, and in 1991, which many of you probably remember. Another threat to our area is that 60% of the homes that have been built since 1990 have been built in the wildland urban interface area, or WUI. You might hear that later on in the talk as well, or you might have heard that in other information if you're doing any research. And a WUI is a zone or transitional area between wildland and human development. And communities in a WUI are at greater risk of catastrophic wildfire, and their presence disrupts the ecology of the area. So the expanse of a WUI in recent decades has significant implications for wildfire management. It creates an environment where fire can move readily between structures and vegetative fuels. This is relevant to everywhere that all of us live, not just to the like heavily wooded areas or the hills of, Contra Costa where I live. But a fire could easily start in South Marin and Concord, Martinez. I mean, you could be looking at fires in the hills in Daly City, and they could easily spread to the residential areas. But generally, the homes that are most at risk are those on hillsides or near wildland and open space. So this is new normal. We need to learn how to live with the threat of wildfire and try to take steps to reduce the risk. I'm going to go kind of quickly here because we don't have a lot of time. We have a lot of information. So hopefully I'm not going too fast. But the most important measures you can take are hardening, which is taking appropriate steps to greatly improve the chance of your home and structures withstanding ignition by wildfire, embers, and other factors. You'll be hearing the term defensible space numerous times today. And creating and maintaining defensible space is up to 100 feet out from your home is a way to harden your home and property. My co-presenter, Hedwig, will be talking about firescaping. So hardening your property, this isn't just an example in a picture. And if you see the property on the left is before hardening was done and creating a defensible space, and on the right is after. And I believe you can see the difference, and I'll get into it now of how you do that. But I just would like to say also that hardening is not fireproofing. Hardening addresses the most vulnerable components of your property with materials and techniques that increase the resistance to the sources of fire. First, as background, I'd like to talk about the 3 types of risks to your home that your home may be exposed to during the wildfire. Then I will explain the concept of defensible space, which is the area between your home and any oncoming wildfire. And then I'll briefly talk about local fire code and preparedness. In order to prepare and protect your property from wildfire, it will help if we can identify the 3 main ways that your property can catch on fire. Those are direct flame, radiant heat, and embers, which are also called firebrands. If you understand these are the threats, it can assist in critically evaluating where you may need to focus your preparedness efforts in order to make your property more fire safe. So direct flame from wildfire are often not, the direct flames are often not hot enough to ignite your home. So depending on the time and exposure, direct flame can ignite your home and the surrounding property. Though flames often will not ignite the house, plants under or around your home and other flammable materials close to your home can catch on fire, can break windows, and it can allow the fire to enter your home. This would include wooden furniture you may have outside, fences, or other materials. Now, radiant heat is generated from burning structures or vegetation, and it can be hot enough to ignite a house without direct flames. This is particularly challenging in densely populated areas and subdivisions where heat from one burning home can ignite the next and create a chain reaction. This is what happened in Coffey Park in Santa Rosa during the Tubbs fire. Coffey Park was the crown jewel of a large development, and it burned to the ground. Firebrands or embers are responsible for most home ignitions and cause 2 out of every 3 structure fires in a wildfire. Embers are small pieces of burning material that can travel 1 to 2 miles ahead of a wildfire. They can create spot fires when they land on a receptive fuel bed, like a gutter that's filled with debris, dry vegetation, wood decks, wood porches, trellises, other flammable material. Embers can also get into vents. They can get in through broken windows. They can get in through siding. If you have siding and there's gaps in it, it can get in the siding. Embers can get in cracks in the stucco. And oftentimes embers that travel up to 1 or 2 miles will puzzle people. How did this house burn? Because it's so far from the main fire, but it's embers that cause it. The fire, the Calder fire that occurred in the Lake Tahoe Basin last summer, the major threat to that were the embers, and they were concerned about embers getting into Tahoe. Fortunately, it didn't. So now I want to talk about defensible space. There are various definitions of defensible space that can be used depending on the location of a property. And different jurisdictions use different zones of defensible space. But today in our talk, we're going to use the 3 zone of defensible space that's used by CAL FIRE. And it covers the 100 feet surrounding your home. They also call this the home ignition zone. So the idea in a defensible space is to try to interrupt the path of fire, which is slowing it down toward the home until firefighters can arrive. And this basic concept is that you reduce the possibility that the radiant heat will build up on your property, and also to reduce the potential that embers will ignite vegetation adjacent to your home. You can create this defensible space with the selection of building materials, designs, and the selection, placement, and maintenance of vegetation that will help your home resist wildfire while improving the chances that your home will survive and not spread beyond your own property. Hedwig later on will be focusing her talk on vegetation that can be used in defensible space. So the defensible space we're going to talk about, there's 3 zones. Zone 1 is the near area. We like to call that the non-combustible zone. That's from your home and 5 feet out. Zone 2, also called the mid area. That's what we like to call, and just a reminder, the lean, clean, and green zone. And that's like 5 feet to 30 feet. And zone 3 is the far zone. That's 30 feet and out. And that's also called the wildland fuel reduction zone. I understand that everyone does not have 100 feet of property, so you adjust these numbers accordingly in creating and maintaining the defensible space. Now, if a neighbor's home is closer than 100 feet from your home, it's especially important to harden your home in order to reduce the vulnerability of radiant heat if their home catches on fire, that it will ignite your home. And ideally, if you have a good relation with your neighbor, it's great to be able to coordinate this with your neighbor, that you both create this defensible space between your homes. So in the non-combustible zone, the idea from 0 to 5 feet is to remove as much as the combustible material as possible. This is the no zone, no fuel zone. And by eliminating the receptive fuel beds in this zone, this includes leaves, pine needles, mulch, wood chips, any debris, dead vegetation, wood piles that you might have for firewood, propane tanks, and any other flammables. I know that many property owners, including myself, use wood chips around the home to suppress weeds and retain moisture, but wood chips and bark mulch will ignite, and they can become flying embers during a wildfire. So ideally, you should have at least a 2-foot zone around your house where there is no mulch. And homeowners should also consider the selection of building materials and designs that will help your home resist wildfire. And Hedwig will talk more about that as well. And most older homes had about a 1/4-inch vents, homes built in the 50s and even earlier 60s. Now it's recommended that we have 1/8 or smaller vents, or install ember-resistant venting. And that's kind of a new technology. I've this past year, I retrofitted my house with ember-resistant vents, and it can be costly. If you're very handy, you can do it yourself. I actually had a company do it for me, but they are, like the picture here on the screen. They will hopefully prevent embers from getting in through your vents, and that's how most of the that's a leading cause of homes igniting. And in many parts of the state, ember-resistant venting is now required on any new homes. Another way is to help make your home non-combustible is to regularly clean your gutters and roofs, especially those valleys, and installing leaf guards can protect against this. I also added these to my home. And as a UC Master Gardener, we cannot recommend this specific product, but if you search for ember-resistant venting or gutter guards, you can find it. The goal in Zone 2 is to eliminate the connectivity between the islands of vegetation and the home, to make it as lean as possible. And that's the area directly near the home. And many of our fire codes address these areas. And also you want to clean, removing the vegetation, the dead materials out from the 5 to 30 foot zone. Important in these zones too are ladder fuels. A ladder fuel refers to a live or dead vegetation that would allow a fire to climb up from the landscape on the ground into the tree canopy, where it's more difficult for firefighters to fight a fire. That's called the laddering effect. This includes tall grass, shrubs, dead trees that are leaning against another tree. And the idea is to create distance between the fuels so that fire cannot easily jump from one source to the other and possibly jump to the roof of your house. Also included in this is that all branches should be pruned up from the ground to at least a 6 foot high, so that an average person can walk under it. If you have shrubs underneath the trees, it's not recommended to take out all your shrubs, but it should be trimmed up. The branches of a tree should be at least 3 times the height of the shrubs under the tree. If you're going to cut any shrubs or prune trees, you should make sure that you're doing this at the correct time of year and use the proper method for doing the pruning. And the clean zone is good sanitation. Just think of the clean zone as outdoor housekeeping. It's an ongoing process, just like cleaning your home. And green, all plants were burned in a firestorm, but healthy, well-hydrated plants add protection and make it more difficult for the plants to burn. And Hedwig will talk more about these kind of plants. And finally, in defensive space, zone 3 is the 30 foot to 100 foot zone. We call this the wildland fuel reduction zone. And the idea there is to reduce energy and spread of fire by eliminating any continuous dense vegetation, both vertically and horizontally. So trim up those trees and make separation between any vegetation. If possible, there should be 10 feet between trees on a flat land and more more separation on slopes. All shrubs and grass should be cut to 3 inches or less. And if you live by a riparian area, those are protected by and regulated by local, county, and state. So it's not recommended to go in there and cut any of the vegetation. So, in concluding this section, just try to remember removal of, reduction of, and replacement of. In 2008, the state of California implemented new fire-resistant building standards for homes in high fire-prone areas. And in the Camp Fire, that was the fire that destroyed Paradise, 18% of the homes that were built prior to 2008 were undamaged, while approximately 50% of those built after were undamaged. So defensible space works, but only if it's created and maintained. So I want to talk a little about fire codes. All of us live somewhere where there's fire codes, and the state has a fire code, but each jurisdiction every 3 years can make changes to the fire code. Very few jurisdictions in our Greater Bay Area just adopt the state fire code. Most of ours are stronger than the state fire code. So we're all on the same schedule, and the last changes to fire code were done in 2020, and you can find your local fire codes on the website of your local fire agency. Up on the screen is the Moraga-Orinda Fire District changes. I'm part of that district and I live in that district, so I just brought that as an illustration of a fire code. And in where we are in Moraga-Orinda in 2020, we enhanced our fire code, and our fire code in our area now is the most stringent in the whole state of California, but I really believe it will become a model for the rest of California. An example in our fire code, which is a good practice for anyone who lives in a high fire zone, is no bark or any organic mulch within 2 feet of a structure, to remove all Monterey pine and eucalyptus within 6 feet of a structure. And also in our area, as of the end of December 2023, all juniper and bamboo within 10 feet of any roadway will have to be removed. Additionally, in our area, one of the big changes was that any home that's being transferred for any reason by sale or transfer of any kind, it does now require a fire hazard inspection. And that program is working really well. In 2021, in our district, Moraga and Orinda alone, we had over 260 of those fire inspections. And out of those 260, initially, about 200 of them failed. So that's 200 properties that were mitigated and improved. In our area also, we changed the date of compliance with our fire code from June 15th to May 31st. So as someone who is an elected fire director, I wanted to talk and a little about notification systems. So I hope all of you who are tuning in today are signed up for your local community warning system. Community warning systems are generally used only for life-threatening incidents, and it will contact you in any way that you want. It can be email, it can be text, it can be a landline. The system in Contra Costa County is the model for the rest of the country, not just the state. And up on the screen is how you could sign up for the community warning system. It's maintained by the Contra Costa Sheriff. If you're tuning into this talk from San Francisco or Marin, I'm sure you can look up community warning system for your local jurisdiction. I highly recommend, if you do nothing else from this talk today, that you sign up for the CWS. Nixel is also available. Nixel is a site that is routinely used to transmit non-life-threatening messages to residents. Nixel might be the first notification that you get if there's a small fire in your community. It's also used by local governments to inform you of downed trees, if there's going to be prescribed burn. If I got one today, actually, that there was a power outage in an area near me. So Nixel, all you need to do anywhere that you live, and it's a private service, but you just you text your zip code to 888-777. And finally, PulsePoint. PulsePoint is an app. You can get it for free from the App Store. It runs on your phone. It can be used to set up your local fire service provider and will alert you when they are dispatched to an incident. Through the app, you can even monitor the actual radio transmissions from the dispatchers to the scene. This is a really cool app if you're geeky at all, if you really want to, stay connected. So like if you're in your home and you hear a siren and sometimes you've thought to yourself, that sounds close. I wonder where they're going. Well, all you need to do is go on the Pulse Point app and you can see where they're responding to. I have it on my phone, and you can set it up to let you know when there's an incident near you. I don't have that, but if I hear a siren or if I just want to see what's going on, I can go there. And finally, I just want to talk a little about being prepared. You all live in the Greater Bay Area, so I'm sure you've heard a lot about preparation. I'm not going to go into detail on all these, but it's important to have a bag, ready by your front door or somewhere you can grab it. In that bag will be supplies you need. If you have to be out for a couple of days, your medications, maybe some money, and you want to have important documents there. It's also recommended that in your home, you have a weather radio and an uninterruptible power supply is a good thing to have. It's I'm a certified citizens emergency response team member. They always recommend that you have a power supply, and if you do want to get a power supply, they can at least run your modem in your house for up to 24 hours. And if anyone remembers this, I'll just say it. The uninterruptible power supply, or UPS, the type you should look to get is called 450 VA UPS. And then also a family plan for your whole family. What do you do in case of emergency? A plan to help neighbors, especially if you have elderly neighbors or disabled neighbors. All of us in the Bay Area have access to sign up to become, in where we live, we call it CERT. It's not always called CERT, but it's a citizens response team, and also Firewise. Firewise is a program of the National Fire Protection Association, or NFPA, and it's a coordinated program that has guidelines for neighborhoods to work together to reduce wildfire risk. You need at least 8 homes to take part, and in our area, you can go on our website, or you can just search under Firewise. So thank you very much. I would just say we're going to save, I think we're going to save questions to later. Jen's going to handle that, but the key points to remember is do your fuel mitigation work, be aware of your local fire code best practices, and mitigate those properties by the deadline. Sign up for CWS. If you don't do anything else, just look up CWS if you're not signed up, and you can sign up all your family members. Be prepared, have a plan, assist your neighbors if you can, and in CERT, we use this following phrase, which is hope for the best and plan for the worst. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Steve. That was awesome. We are going to reserve the questions towards the end, but I just want to say I have already signed up for the CWS just right now, and I also did the Pulse Point app. So I'm really excited for that information. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Steve, for sharing this important insight on how to harden your home. I'm Hedwig, and very happy to present you part 2, how to harden your landscape. We have still a lot to cover, so let's jump right in. What is firescaping? Firescaping is landscape design that reduces the vulnerability of your home and property to wildfire. It is traditional landscape design, but implemented with the principles of defensible space. So you can develop a landscape with a choice of fire-safer plants and the use of non-flammable material that can offer you the best defensible space while also enhancing your property. There are 4 key components to firescaping. Whether you start from scratch or whether you are renovating an existing landscape, designing your fire-tolerant garden comes first. Maintenance of your property before, during, and after implementing your design is the most important component. Third comes a careful selection and placement of your plants. And finally, getting involved in your community to not only create a Firewise garden, but a Firewise neighborhood as well. Before creating a design plan, you need to look at the lay of the land. Good decisions will depend upon topography, existing vegetation, your location and local weather, and whether your site can be irrigated. For example, a home located on a brushy site above a south or west-facing slope will require more extensive planning for defensible space than a house situated on a flat lot with little vegetation around it. As we know, the steeper the slope, the faster a fire will spread. Slopes with a lot of vegetation are particularly hazardous, especially when they are not being irrigated. The steeper the slope, the further apart we need to place our plants, and as a consequence, the larger our defensible space will become. So with defensible space in mind, is it possible for us to create a beautiful and fire-tolerant garden? And the answer is yes. We really do not need to hardscape our property like in this photograph, with little or no vegetation at all. Your home's outdoor spaces consist of hardscapes and softscapes. Softscapes are your plants and living elements, and the hardscapes are the non-living elements of landscapes, like driveways, walkways, the apron around your home, as well as fences and gates, retaining walls, gazebos, and so forth. Designing your hardscape well does not only function as a fuel break, it can really beautify your property as well. Like in this photograph of the Bueller home in Orinda, designed by Frank Lloyd Wright, where boulders were used around the house, around a koi pond and a concrete walkway around the house without any vegetation growing against the siding of the house or overhanging the roof. I do not think Frank Lloyd Wright had firescaping in mind when designing this home, but this is an excellent example of using the principles of defensible space in Zone 1 and 2. This more contemporary property is another example where large pavers were used around the main home, as well as a well-irrigated lawn. Concrete retaining walls and steps lead you uphill to a guest house built with non-flammable siding, and the gravel playground in front of the guest house, as well as a concrete retaining wall behind it, are also excellent choices. As you can see, this home is located in a rather wooded area with well-maintained large trees that are thinned out and pruned up, and the ground vegetation is kept low and well irrigated. The house on this property is a more traditional Mediterranean style home with a very steep hidden driveway, which also functions as a fuel break. You cannot see it on this photograph, but the driveway runs behind this well-pruned specimen tree all the way past the front door. A large rock garden has been created using extra wide stone steps, rocks, boulders, and low-growing plants. And this is all very complementary to the style of this home. Here are some more examples of hardscaping. You can use water, boulders, and rocks for ponds, swimming pools, dry riverbeds, as well as succulent gardens. Fences, gates, and shade structures are best built in metal. Portland steel is very popular, but can get rather expensive. In my neighborhood, I see a lot of fences similar to the second picture on the bottom row. Most of the time, it is a combination of wood and metal. An alternative to wood, however, is using cement board instead, which is a fire-safer material. And concrete retaining walls can be designed in a way so they can double function as extra seating. In zone 2, plant only low-growing, non-woody plants and ground covers. Succulents, vegetables, flowers, even a lawn are great choices here. It is very important to keep plants well-spaced, well-irrigated, and well-maintained. Remember, keep it lean, clean, and green, and remove all vegetation that could catch fire. Create islands of group plantings with space in between, and it will also allow easy access for maintenance. It is also a good idea to use rock, gravel, and other non-flammable materials in between those islands, as well as around other structures on your property. When using mulch, however, make sure it is non-flammable. Our handout includes an interesting study on the flammability of different mulches. Now we're getting to the hard part, keeping it all well maintained. It is really a year-round task. The beautiful garden on this photograph is impeccably maintained and cared for. Lush gardens like this are gorgeous, but with the extreme drought, climate change, and wildfires, can we really still afford designing gardens like this here in California? When it comes to fire-smart landscaping, it is much more important to consider where a plant is situated and how it is maintained than the actual plant itself. The top left of this drawing shows you a lush landscape similar to the previous slide I showed you. This garden design does not follow defensible space principles. In contrast to the bottom right drawing, which shows no plantings near the home, a solitary tree pruned up and away from the home, and islands of plantings with adequate space in between. So let's revisit the photograph of the Bueller home for the no ignition zone 1, which is the most restricted. This zone should only contain non-combustible materials, which means no foundation plants or vegetation overhanging the roof. It is like creating a non-flammable apron around your home, which will give you the best protection against flying embers. The objective of zone 3 is to decrease the energy and speed of a fire by eliminating continuous dense vegetation, both horizontally and vertically. Proper spacing and pruning of your trees and shrubs is very important and will depend on the lay of your land. It is very well possible that you maybe even have to remove some of your shrubs and trees in order to follow the principles of defensible space. And zone 3 can also reach beyond your property when you live in close proximity of your neighbor, in a townhouse or an HOA community, especially when surrounded by woolly zones. So in summary, on a regular basis, we need to prune and thin our trees, shrubs, and low-growing plants, remove weeds and dead vegetation, as well as keep the roofs, eaves, and gutters clean. And last but not least, irrigate according to each plant's needs. The top image shows you a manzanita, neatly pruned up with dead leaves and branches removed. Manzanita is mentioned on both hazardous and FireSafe Plants lists. When growing older, manzanita is only green on the top and develops dry undergrowth, which needs to be removed. When you prune it well, it almost looks like a garden sculpture due to its smooth, dark bark and interesting twisted branches. On the second image, you see a sloped side with very mature oak trees that have been thinned out and pruned up. There's only a thin layer of fallen leaves on the ground and nothing growing underneath the oaks. This homeowner also removed quite a few of her oak trees. She also worked together with her neighbor to keep the fences clean of vegetation and wind-blown debris. These two photographs show you the same tree, once before maintenance and once after. This is a good example of keeping your landscape clean lean, and green. And wouldn't you agree that this tree looks so much more attractive with the trunk and lower branch showing? It is important to select the right plant for the right place. FireSafe plants do exist. Unfortunately, however, with enough heat, all plants will burn. Ideally, we'd like to plant California native plants that are low in maintenance, drought resistant, water wise, and fire tolerant. Choose wisely though, because although California natives are better adapted to our surroundings, they can also be quite flammable. Proper plant selection requires a lot of research. Many lists of fire hazardous and Firewise plants are available. Unfortunately, none are science-based and are at times even contradicting each other. Our handout includes a list of FireSafe plants from Diablo FireSafe Council. This list is a work in progress and is being updated regularly. I'm also sharing useful links so that you can do some of your own research online. During your research of what to plant and what to avoid in your particular landscape, we encourage you to visit local botanical gardens, demonstration sites, as well as private Firewise gardens and landscapes. A lot of literature on firescaping and wildfires is available as well. I'm sure your local librarian can help you with the right reading and research material. When choosing your plants, it is best not to buy impulsively or what looks good in the nursery. Bamboo, fountain grass, eucalyptus, chemise, juniper, and rosemary are all hazardous plants because they build up a lot of dead material. They have tiny leaves that easily ignite and they lose their moisture easily too. They have high volume versus the size of the plant and many contain very flammable oils. When you compare this to FireSafe plants, they have little volume towards the size of the plant and a more open and airy form. Usually they have thicker and larger leaves and a high mineral and moisture content. They also produce little dead material. As I mentioned before, it is best to choose native trees and shrubs that are well adapted and well maintained. When choosing trees, it is also important to keep the longevity and size at maturity in mind. Avoid planting trees in rows or hedges, since this can provide an uninterrupted path of fire. Try to select trees that shed minimal amount of vegetation. Also keep in mind that healthy plants are more fire resistant than plants struggling to survive. Apart from maintenance, we also need to pay attention to our soil and the required conditions for your selected plants. Distressed plants die, wilt, or will produce dead and flammable material. Because of limited time left, I can only give you a few examples. I see juniper often used close to homes and driveways as it is low maintenance, drought tolerant, and needs very little water. It is, however, often also called the green gas can, as it produces a lot of dry and brittle undergrowth, especially when mature, and it also has a high oil content. Bamboo is mostly grown as a green screen or a hedge. Like Steve mentioned, it should be removed from structures and entryways, as all bamboo species are flammable, especially because of the wooden stem and dead material. Chemise is a flowering California native shrub, mostly found in chaparral areas, and is holding the soil of many of our California hillsides. Chemise sprouts back easily after fires. It is, however, also highly flammable. Other fire-prone natives are chaparral pea, Artemisia because of the debris, coyote breast, and many more if in the wild or not maintained. The Western redbud, one of my personal favorites, Favorites is not only a California native and Firewise, it is also a visually very attractive and desired wildlife tree or shrub, especially by birds. It is often used as an alternative to prunus. There are several different varieties of monkey flower, which is a California native and produces attractive flowers in the spring. It is also a good choice for a fire-resistant plant. Cacti and succulents are wonderful low-growing plants that have very low watering needs. The fact that they can store up to 80% of available water is pretty amazing. Succulents just love to hug rocks and stone, which adds to the beauty of many hardscape gardens. Succulents are native to many arid areas all over the world, including California. And the reason why they are fire safer is that when exposed to fire, most succulents first boil or char before burning up. And this is because of their high moisture content. Every time I drive by the Gateway Emergency Exhibit Center, I'm reminded of the real threat of wildfires here in California. Getting involved about fire safety is certainly not only about pulling weeds. We need to protect ourselves from ourselves, our neighbors, and the whole neighborhood we live in. The house on the left completely burned down early one morning in Orinda. My friend, also a master gardener, lives next door and had to evacuate in the wee hours, not knowing whether her home would survive or not. Like for so many people, this year, last year, and in many years before, it was devastating. The picture on the right shows the same property completely leveled to the ground at the cost of the homeowner, who now has to deal with a lien against this property. This fire was caused by negligence. If you notice a fire hazardous situation in your neighborhood, please report it. When it comes to wildfire, no single person alone can protect the community. First, we have to work with our immediate neighbors. If your immediate neighbor's property isn't fire safe, chances are that your Firewise property will not survive during a wildfire either. Obtaining a Firewise community status requires a lot of volunteer effort to reduce the risk of spreading wildfires, as Defensible Space principles are now extended to the whole community, not just your property. Some communities are even required to obtain this status because of the difficulty to get good homeowners insurance. So why not all work together and create a safer neighborhood? Mother Earth will be very pleased and most grateful. This concludes our presentation for today. But before going to our Q&A session, I would like to give you some more information on our organization, the Master Gardener Contra Costa organization. You see our website here. If you go there right now, it's all about tomatoes. We will have an online sale going on with a lot of varieties of tomatoes, and you can order right there. It will be going on April 2nd is the date that we will fill the orders. We're also available, we are also active on social media, so you can find us there as well. And our help desk is working year-round to answer all your urgent gardening questions. We have a whole list of webinars lined up for 2022. You can also see them on our website. And if you sign up for our newsletter, you will get notification of all our events, not only webinars, but also in-person talks and short videos. And all our webinars are recorded, and you will find them on YouTube just a little bit later after they happen. So you can follow these webinars at your leisure time. We also would like to ask you to fill out a more brief survey. You can connect to this QR code, or I will put the link into the chat. And that's it for us. Thank you very much. We can go to our question and answers.
Oh my gosh, thank you both so much. It's so much super valuable information. I took a lot of notes myself, so I really appreciate that. And it seems like we have a pretty quiet group because nobody, or you've just covered it so efficiently. Nobody has questions, but I have a couple questions.
Okay.
So one thing that came up for me is that, you know, this balance between we're living in a drought and we're trying to retain moisture in our garden as much as possible, but then also the fact that bark and whatnot can be flammable. So it's almost like, it feels like there's a tipping point that retaining moisture with bark is good because you're keeping that in the ground, and then not good too because it's bark and it can be flammable. Does that make sense? So
Yeah,
I'm just
yes,
wondering-
and yeah, exactly. And I have pathways in my house. I have a pretty big property, and I have pathways that have wood chips there. But the 2-foot zone around my house is all gravel. I don't have
Okay.
any bark right up to the house. So, you know, bark does you know, maintain the moisture and keeps the weeds down and everything like you said, but you should keep it away at least 2 feet away from the home. You know, people often have bark going right up to your house, and, you know, if those embers get in that bark, you know, it's enough to make sparks to get up in your home as well. So,
Okay, that's helpful.
and just to let you know, the other thing about the mulch and bark is, you can look it up online. I don't think the article is in our handout, but there's different there's a study, it was actually in the New York Times last year, about some research that's been done on the bark. And there's different types of bark, obviously. And you know, the worst one, I'll just say this, which I saw today somewhere, is that stuff, what do you call it? Like
Gorilla hair?
gorilla hair, mammoth hair, you know, that one, that's the
Yes.
worst.
It is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was at the top, worst one. In our areas here, you know, I would not use it. So, and I saw
Yeah, we
it
don't
just
even sell that. We can't even sell that.
Oh, you can't, okay. I
No.
can't remember where I saw it.
And to respond also about gravel, there's so many different kinds of gravel right now. When we did our talk in Discovery Bay, there was one lady who said, yeah, but you know, if I put all that gravel in my yard, the temperature is just going to go up. It's already very hot there in the summer. And she made a point there, because if you put white reflective gravel there, it just adds to the heat. So you have to research a little bit the kind of gravel you are going to put into.
Yeah, and I also wanted to comment, because this has come up before, and I noticed it in your pictures, Hedwig, in terms of design. So a lot of people start thinking about drought tolerant plants now, or as we go further into the year and it gets hotter and hotter. If you have established plants like she had in her slides, even if they are roses or they're boxwood or azaleas or something like that, they will withstand drought better than putting in a little baby drought plant right now in sort of the heat of it all and trying to get it established, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
So
Definitely. Yeah.
yes, we usually, I mean, if you're doing a big, you know, revamp of your garden, we always say fall is the best time to plant for drought tolerance, because we
Very
can
true.
take advantage of the fall and winter rains, hopefully. But I just wanted to note that, because I feel like I definitely see that with clients that come to me, and, you know, it's just good to sort of have that in your
Mhm.
mindset as you're approaching it.
Yeah, and sometimes it's also good to just leave an area bare for a season or so.
Right.
If you don't have to put it full of plants, it's not wise right now to do that anyway. So
Mhm.
you can create a little seating area in the middle of your yard. It's very attractive to find this little island where you can actually entertain.
Yeah, and I like how you brought up boulders. I'm big on boulders lately. I've just like every design, I'm like, that needs a boulder. Let's put a boulder there.
Yeah,
Because it is nice, you know, it adds another element to the design, and then also you can sit there, you know, it's just a nice add, and you know, it's not flammable, so it's a
And
good
very
way to
attractive.
take up
Yeah.
space, right? Exactly. And then the second thing that when you mentioned, Steve, when you were talking about 10 feet in between trees, that I hadn't heard that before. So to me, that was very helpful. And I imagine you're talking about 10 feet between the crown, that like the edge of the crown of the trees.
yes,
Okay. And
yes,
then even more so on
on a hill.
hillsides.
That's ideal.
Yeah.
And I know I have trees on my property, and I just, if you maintain your trees, you do that 6 foot from the ground up, get rid of all the branches and clean up, cut all the grass around. Some of my trees aren't 10 foot apart, but I do maintain them. So that's important also.
I mean, I'm just thinking on my hillside, I'd have to probably cut down at least 20 trees to get that.
Right. And I know, and people don't want to do that, but so if you
Yeah,
still keep
I
the
know.
trees, just
Yeah.
maintain that, so you don't have things leaning against it, and you go up, trim them up that 6 foot.
Uh-huh.
This is all best case, this is all ideal. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
No, it's very helpful, and I appreciate you putting your contact information up. If anyone has questions, I feel like everybody's just quiet tonight. So if you have questions as it sort of percolates down, feel free to email them your questions, or you can email me as well. This is being recorded too, and all of the recordings are available. Oh, this will be available on Friday, March 11th, both on our website and on our YouTube channel. So if you subscribe to our YouTube channel, you'll get a notification when the recording is up.
Yeah.
On our website, all the resource handouts are available that they sent us underneath the record. That will be available underneath the recording. Be sure to fill out the survey, because that's very helpful for them and that organization to be able to plan upcoming classes and provide relevant content and whatnot. So I really appreciate your time and expertise. I hope to have you both back sometime. I know I'm looking at all the CCMC classes, and I like want to plan all of them. So
All right.
I hope to see you again soon. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Lots of comments, great presentation. So again, thank you everyone for joining us, and have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday evening.
And thank you, Jen.
Thanks, Jen.
You're a great host.
Thank you. All right.
Bye.
Talk soon. Bye.